Budget 60% mechanical keyboards. The market is pretty full of them now, with all of them basically being the same thing, so let's see what's different about this one, the GK61 Optical Mechanical Keyboard. Thanks to Banggood.com for providing this keyboard for review and for their continued support. Inside the box we get the keyboard itself with a small user guide. We have a nice braided USB Type-C cable, a plastic keycap puller, and also a key switch puller, which as usual tells us that it is hot swappable. Alrighty, so here it is in all of its 60% glory. It has a very basic build with a plastic enclosure and an internal steel plate, so it's still sturdy with minimal flex. It comes in at about 545 grams, which is about the same as other comparable boards like the An Pro. We have a familiar enclosure with a mixture of glossy and textured satin plastic. Normally I don't like glossy plastic on keyboards, but it's only sparingly used here. There are no flip up feet, so we have this fixed angle, but because of how short it is, like from a top down view, it doesn't really need them. On the rear there's a USB Type-C port, and on the bottom there's 4 rubber feet to keep it sturdy on the desk. So the case looks nice, you know, they all look pretty similar, but I will do another video in the near future modding it, so stay tuned for that. This has a completely standard ANSI layout, so replacing these keycaps is a total breeze. They do have other layouts in this form factor, so the GK64 is one of them which I checked out a while back, and that incorporates dedicated arrow keys, and so does the GK62, but in a different way. This however does not have the proper dedicated arrow keys, instead we have them on a secondary layer which is down here in the bottom right corner. So to use them we hold Fn plus one of the keys. And then we have the function row on the number row, the nav cluster which includes home and delete, insert and all that on the right hand side of the board. So it's very simple, just like all other 60% boards in how they put the other keys on other layers. The keycaps are pretty interesting, but I have seen them before. They have the standard plastic finish on the top, but then they have a glossy finish on the sides, much like the glossy bits on the case. Might not be for everyone, but it does add a bit of visual edge to the keyboard, especially if you have the light shine on it just right, so I don't really mind it, to be honest. The legends on the keycaps are pretty thick and not the cleanest, but they let that RGB backlighting shine through. But because they're so thick, the lighting looks pretty dull and quite faded. There's a bunch of effects that we can go through on board via the Fn key. So like the GK64 I checked out, this has a microphone under the spacebar. And yeah, I get it, your immediate thought would be why? Like this is some pretty sketchy stuff and yeah, that's what I thought as well. It's just a novelty thing, I guess. We can of course further customize both the keys and lighting through the downloadable software. I visited the makebyself.cn website, but there was no software there. Instead, it was just on the Banggood product page, which goes to Google Drive, and again, a little sketch looking. Everything is kind of all over the place. First of all, there's the driver mode and then the onboard or offline mode. Driver mode is when all the settings are saved on the computer, while onboard/offline mode saves the settings on the keyboard itself. In driver mode, there's more customizability options. We can customize any of the keys to another key, or any of these other functions here. And then we have 3 additional layers that we can customize, but when you click them, the only way you know that you've picked them is by looking at the key you're trying to customize. Like, it doesn't light up or change color or anything. We can also record macros up here with delays and whatnot. And the lighting, there's 3 places that have lighting in it. There's the lighting tab with all the lighting effects and also some color customizability. And this lighting section, you can seemingly customize the lighting of each key, but I still don't know how it really works. And then this DIY light section, I was just clicking all over the place, had no clue. Stuff like hovering over non-labeled icons and having it not tell you what it is, it makes it all really confusing, and frankly I got a bit lazy here in not wanting to deal with this, so yeah, sorry, it's just an overcomplicated and messy piece of software that I just don't like. The keycaps are made from 1.1mm ABS plastic and are double shot, so the legend is another piece of plastic and will never fade away, but the cool part is what's under them. So there's 2 versions of the GK61. We have the standard hot swappable one with sockets that allow you to chuck in whatever key switch you want, and then we have this, which has the Gateron Optical key switches, which are also hot swappable. So the Gateron Optical key switches. I've actually already checked these out a while back with the Tesoro Excalibur Spectrum. However, back then, I think they had them exclusively, so they had the Tesoro logo on them. But as you can see, they're exactly the same. There's no metal contacts, and we have that bulging on the top housing to further disperse that backlighting. But back to how it actually works. So normally we have metal contacts inside the switch which are mechanically triggered by you pressing down the stem. Here, all we're doing is pushing down the stem, and you can see the stem going up and down. And if we look at the PCB, we have our infrared sensor. So all that's happening is that the stem is blocking the signal, and it's that simple. Therefore, no other key switches will fit on here besides optical key switches. These ones in particular are the Gateron red optical key switches, but with more of a maroon or burgundy color. These are light linear switches, meaning that it has no bump or click, and it's just smooth all the way. It's basically just the optical version of the Gateron red switch, which is similar to the Cherry MX red. The difference here is that there's no metal contact, so the stem has no legs, and therefore there's none of that usual friction between the leaf and the stem. So it's a pretty smooth key switch. Like the Gateron reds are regarded to be somewhat smooth already, like smoother than Cherry MX reds, and these are just a bit smoother than those. The keyboard is of course available in other optical key switches as well. Even though it isn't clicky, it is a loud keyboard with the bottoming out and top out sounds. I'd say it's one of the louder linear keyboards I've come across, possibly because of its quite hollow enclosure, which we'll see later. The stabs aren't bad at all because they do come factory lubed, but it doesn't look like they did the best job. Taking the keyboard apart is super simple with just a couple of Phillips head screws on top. Alright, so as said, this is quite the hollow plastic enclosure. There's no ribbing or anything, just a whole lot of empty space, and I think this is why I found it to be quite loud. The mounting plate is made from 1.5mm steel, which is pretty standard, and gives the keyboard its heft and rigidity. The underside of the PCB is the barest keyboard PCB I've come across. As it is optical, there is no through-hole components. Everything is surface mounted on the other side, including the SMD LEDs. Unfortunately, this is not compatible with aftermarket cases. The USB-C port is in the right place for once, but none of the standoffs line up at all. The plate doesn't really fit, and the screws are M2.5 instead of M2. So yeah, many of this feels and sounds very repetitive, and it really is. There are a heap of random budget 60% boards out there now, so it can all look the same. And this one, just from looking at it, is much of the same, but it really isn't. Again, there are two versions, the regular hot swap version that accepts MX style key switches, and then this Gateron Optical version, which is also hot swappable, but just with optical switches. And that's the big difference between this and the rest. Being able to hot swap key switches and having optical switches, which is still very rare. The optical key switches feel great, they're smooth and work like a charm. They should be very durable over time since it's just some stem blocking some light, but does it have enough of an advantage over the standard hot swap version? And personally, I don't think so. The standard version allows you to hot swap whatever key switch you want, given it has enough room for the SMD LED, which are way more accessible by the way, while this one is limited to optical switches. But I do appreciate something different, and I'm always happy to see some innovation in mechanical keyboards, especially in key switches. But I'd honestly get the standard GK61 for a bit more flexibility, but that's just me. Thanks to Banggood.com for providing this keyboard for review and for their continued support. Links are in the description if you want to check it out.